Lately, BMW and Lexus have been fighting for the top spot as the best small luxury SUV in the market. And in today's video, we're going to be comparing the BMW X3 to the Lexus NX. And let me tell you this, one of these is old money and one of these is that modern new money. Stick around to the end to figure out which one it is. I'm Justin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. Okay, so let's get started by admiring the front end of both of these luxurious SUVs. And the one that sticks out the most is definitely this BMW grille. And I use the term grille very loosely because now, even though we still have that massive kidney shape, it's actually more of a decoration than an actual grille. And we're starting to see this a little bit with everything like EV cars that you don't actually need as much cooling in. And that design language has sort of filtered into more aerodynamics and less actual big shape holes in the front of the car. But BMW did a good job of making it still look like a grille. We have some flat pieces here. It's interesting that the front-facing camera is actually asymmetrical. It's off to the one side. That's the first time I've seen that in any of the luxury cars. However, I'm sure the vehicle is smart enough to make it seem center when you're actually looking through it. So we have these big grills, and then at the bottom we have an actual active grill, and I can see by when I stick my hands in, I can see these little flaps that open and close at different speeds. I'm sure that is to get the most fuel economy and the most cooling or whatever the vehicle needs. I also love the BMW squareness. Like for a smaller SUV, this has a huge presence, and especially with that outline daytime running lights around the grille. The BMW daytime running lights don't just stop at the kidney grills. We also have these swooping sort of LEDs down the side, as well as almost like a triple beam LED headlight setup. I like that BMW always brands its headlights, and this one says BMW LED at the side, and there's a little bit of a shape decoration as well. Over to the Lexus. So this is not a sport package, and because of that, we still have that straight vertical up and down sort of hatching on that luxury executive style grille. And then the daytime running lights that are just above the triple beam headlights, which by the way, both of these cars are amazing at nighttime because of that LED technology. We have a little bit of grays. This is the nori green color. So it kind of gives a really nice classic contrast between the two, hence the old money, and a little bit of black trim sort of towards the outside of it. In terms of front ends, I mean, both of them for being small SUVs, especially the NX, which when you think about is smaller than the RX grille, but the front end is actually a little bit larger, which gives a nice presence to the two. And both of them definitely demand a little bit of presence. However, the BMW is just that little bit of extra. And I think you'll see that as we go through the rest of the vehicle. So in terms of hood lines, instead of having these big lines down the center of it, the BMW actually just has this cute little nose around its BMW logo. And I think we're gonna see that into some more designs for other models in the BMW lineup. In terms of the Lexus, we have that swooping vision line that sort of starts at that nose and goes around to the back. And actually the hood on the Lexus is a lot smaller than the X3, and that's gonna be something people are gonna say in the comments, is why are you comparing these two cars when the X3 is gonna be a little bit more squared off, a little bit bigger than the NX, but somehow, I promise you it'll all make sense. Okay, so before I get into the side profile, let's talk about the wheel setup. So on the X3, and this one is the M package, obviously, we have a 21-inch wheel versus the Lexus 20-inch wheel and a much wider stance. So we have 255 width on the front of the X3 and 285 on the rear, meaning that we have a staggered setup, which is great for performance, and that's what this car screams is high performance. However, it's not the best for getting things like winter tires, rotating those tires so they last longer, where the Lexus or the 235s is gonna be more of a square setup where you can rotate them, you can really get the most mileage out of those. I will say the brake setup on the other side of this wheel is amazing. It's absolutely wild. We have a huge blue brake caliper with the M logo on it and a massive disc brake that is like what we see in some of our highest performance Lexus, and it has some really good stopping power for this BMW. Okay, so for the side profile, one of the things that I love about the BMW is we don't have any of those fake decorations that we've seen on other models. Instead, we just get that really cool classic little M badge on that fender. Nothing fake about that. Now, as we walk past these two cars, I will say the BMW is a little bit taller, a little bit more squared off. Body lines, nothing too crazy, except for this mirror has this wild sort of like air intake looking shape to it, I guess you could say. And being it's the M baggage, everything is all blacked out, which I really like. And then we go to the NX, which has some body lines. We have some at the top and at the bottom. No decorations on the side. However, we have some chrome here. So we have chrome around both windows as well as a little bit on the mirror. And of course, one of my favorite features is that electronic door latch where it's just super easy to open and close that all digitally. On the BMW, it's just a normal door handle. And the door itself, super solid. There's nothing wrong with that. As we walk to the back, you'll see the NX will start to slope off a little bit. The X3 seems to do it more rapidly and has a little bit more square shape to it, but still somehow just feels bigger as you go to the back. Okay, so the back of the BMW is absolutely wild. And the rear end of luxury cars is always one of my favorite things to admire because when someone's a couple car lengths behind you, that's what they're gonna see, right? So the taillights, super sharp, really nice modern design on sort of the current BMW lineup. And then the geometry of that rear hatch. So we have angles coming out of everywhere. We have some really modern shapes. Interesting exposed wiper right in the middle, and that glass is actually quite tiny when you think about it. I know I'm not a measuring tape or anything like that. However, it's, you know, quite small, but usually all it needs to be is big enough for your rearview mirror anyway. Then we sort of see the M50 badge. We have that BMW logo, the X3 logo, and a little bit of decoration at the bottom here with some of the nicest integrated quad exhausts that I've seen. It fits really nicely into that rear bumper. It almost lines up right with the bottom, blends in nicely. I love that BMW is still showing an exhaust because all these other brands are just trying to tuck those in and hide them away because of future design language coming. So the mindset behind that with some of the other brands is that if cars in the future are going to be full EVs, well, they don't want to be driving a car with an exhaust at the back. And BMW has taken a very different approach. Over to the Lexus, however, we have a very sharp taillight design, a little bit more spread out than some of the other models. So we have that left side, and then it sort of gets split up to that katana that goes across that big LEXUS in the back, and then over to the right side, NX350, a couple shapes and decorations, things like this bumper guard, and then towards the bottom, just a really plain, classy looking bottom of the bumper with that exhaust tucked nicely underneath. You can't really see it too much, especially in the hybrids and any of the non-F Sports for sure. And there is a little bit of piano black decoration. The rear glass on this versus the X3 is a huge difference. It's almost double the size. However, that doesn't necessarily mean double the vision. It's just something to point out, that's all. Okay, so let's check some of that trunk space for the X3. I'm expecting it to be a little bit bigger because it's more squared off than the Lexus. And for the most part, I'm right. I mean, we have a little bit of angle at the top. However, it is pretty straight up and down for the most part. Depth-wise, it's not crazy, but for a small SUV, it's definitely more than enough. We have a very hefty tonneau cover that goes forward and back, a little bit of storage under that fake floor. No spare tire that I can see. However, it looks like there could be enough space, so maybe certain models do have that. And I think, yep, a little bit of a grocery hook and a 12-volt charging port. I don't see any way to fold down those rear seats back here, but that's not the end of the world either. Let's compare it to the Lexus. Again, decent sized space. We lose a little bit of the upper end space because of the angle of the hatch. However, a friend of mine once said you should buy a car for what you're going to use 80% of the time instead of just the 20% that you're going to use things. So I think if you're going to be stacking boxes 80% of the time, you're probably going to go for a bigger SUV anyway. So this will be more than enough for most people. It is a soft tonneau cover. I'm not sure the mindset on that if there's a benefit to one or the other. However, it does fold up nicely and you can place it under that fake floor, which is quite convenient. And there is a huge storage space under the front of that fake floor that you could fit tons and tons of stuff. Same thing, we have some grocery hooks on either side, and most models have the power folding rear seats where you have a little switch, you can press a button, they'll fold down. So if you do have something bigger that you need to put in there, it's quite easy to do so. Okay, so getting in this X3, this is a totally redesigned car for 2025. So there is a lot of modern amenities here to go over, and some of them are absolutely wild and took me a while to even realize what they are. So for starters, the door, super solid to close. The materials around it are very modern with sort of just like a textured black. However, what you notice the most of is these light panels. And I can't remember what BMW calls them. However, they are everywhere. We have one below the screen. We have one wrapping around these cup holders. I've seen this in like the new BMW M5, and it's totally customizable, and it gives a really like nightclub vibe to the interior. And I think there's a mindset behind it that it also keeps you awake at nighttime. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. The other big thing that you're gonna notice is this centerpiece here. So instead of the classic center console, we have like these platforms sort of, where a couple cup holders, which is great, and then these bigger pads that are on an angle for things like wireless charging for your phone, but there's also some space for other things. Couple USB-Cs, and that's all trimmed by one of those light bars. And of course, the little M logo in the center. It's amazing how much space that takes up, but I mean, it's pretty functional, which is why it's so modernized, I guess you could say. In the center, we now have the gear shift, which is like, it reminds me of like a window switch where it's like, you know, click, 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 click up. So to put it in drive, for instance, you click it down twice, like you would push your window switch down twice to do a full roll down. And then park, you just hit the P. There is a few other like soft touch buttons here. They're not physical buttons, but home, media, telephone, all of the things to control that screen, along with this BMW remote wheel, which is actually pretty easy to use. What I found is that it has a touch screen, and you can do that, and then you can sort of fine tune it with this wheel, which is quite nice. And then when you get up close to the wheel, you realize there is some artistic decor built into it, and it's all glass, so you can kind of see through it to that decor. And then the decor sort of fades into the black as you sort of zoom out and look. We also have some drive modes and some shortcuts here in the center, which is always great because I find my arm is resting here anyway. Why not use it for something? And one of the nicest things, which is a classic volume wheel. So really quick to be able to turn up and down your volume, all from this center console. The armrest, I mean, nothing to write home about there, just a regular standard issue armrest. However, what's not standard issue and is one of the coolest, more modern takes on something is how to control the vents. I know that sounds silly, but I'm really excited about this. It's like this little joystick wheel here underneath the vents that you sort of move up and down and then left and right. And it's all rubber and grippy and very high quality. And that's how you control the vents in a really quick manner. And those are everywhere. They're on the sides, they're in the middle, they're in the back. All of them have that same control. And above that, we now have sort of a haptic slidey wheel is what I call it. And that's how you control how much air is coming out of said vents. So it's 0 to 1 and then everywhere in between. And then we have our shortcuts for front defrost, rear defrost, and of course our four ways, which by the way, changes most of the colors to red to remind you that, hey, you're probably in a hazard right now. I will also say the sound of this car and what it makes is one of the best things about these new BMWs. Even pressing that, instead of like a hard clicking noise, it's really soft and like kind of more like a thump, if anything. And same thing when I got in here and was parking it in the showroom today. When I got close to other objects, that beeping, instead of being a sharp beep, was really musical, I would say. Almost as if an orchestra was telling me to slow down and not get too close to one of the objects, which I thought was really nice. Then we have this new screen. It reminds me of like those Samsung LED curved screens. Very sharp, really easy to use. I always try not to diss a car company on their multimedia system without using it for like a week or two, because these systems are designed not for like someone just to do a quick YouTube review and be able to know how to use it, but instead to use for every day and find out more and more features as you own the car. And because of that, it seems super easy to use. I mean, I'm used to the Lexus world, which is not as many layers to the system as this. However, I was able to find my way around quite easy. You can customize it. Your heated seats and heated controls are all integrated in there as well. And that wasn't too bad for me to figure out either. So really nice display there. I can't decide if I'm a fan, as I adjust my fan speed, no pun intended, of how it's all connected to that instrument display. So that's what's on the other side of the steering wheel. You can customize it and it is very HD. However, it is like looking at a TV. So I know that's super futuristic and very modern and reminds me of a spaceship. However, I don't know if I love that as much as some of the other ones, and I'll show you why later. But again, very easy to use. I don't think it's touch at all, no, which is good because you don't want to be touching that as you drive. Lots of different customizable layouts by the looks of it. Very, very much a spaceship, and there's even things like augmented reality and stuff like that. So if you're one of those people who want the latest and greatest tech, that gives me that type of vibe for sure. On the paddle shifters, we have some grip on the back and some red rubber, which is kind of nice. We get that red line down the center because this is an M50 and deserves a little bit of M performance type things. And also the flat bottom steering wheel just screams that. It is a mild hybrid, so on the left paddle shifter, it does say boost, which I'm sure has something to do with that, and overall feels really good. Now, one of the craziest things is actually on the door. So there's this like X3 logo here, and that's where the door handle is. It's like a plastic door handle, it's nothing crazy. But in front of that, we have our lock and unlock button, which sort of just rocks a whole panel. So you press lock, it rocks that panel back. You press unlock, it rocks it forward. And then there's a haptic sort of slidey thing again. And I had all of my staff in this car and we were all trying to figure out what does that do? Well, it turns out that is also your fan speed for this side. So there is a fan on that side of the steering wheel, and that's how you control that fan speed. I did have to Google that, so if you're owning one of these cars and you're wondering what that is, I hope your salesperson told you because I didn't know. And the other interesting thing is even though it has a panel roof, it doesn't open. It's a solid piece of glass, which, if I'm being honest with myself, most consumers don't open their sunroof. From what I found anyway, they just use it for the light. So it probably makes for a quieter ride, the fact that it doesn't have an extra moving panel up there. But it is something to note if you're looking at this car. The seats are super comfortable, although this is what we start to feel or remind ourselves that we are in a smaller SUV because they're quite narrow, I would say that. Under the thigh support is unbelievable, and BMW does a great job at that. I'm 6'1", my butt is all the way back on the seat, and that under thigh support is actually going past my kneecaps. It is manual, so you do have to slide it manually. And also I did notice the steering wheel telescoping is also manual. So those are two manual things in this package at least. Okay, so sitting in the back of the X3, the space-wise, I'm actually really impressed with. It is a very tall car, and I noticed that with the BMW SUVs is they do a good job of making it so that you have a lot of space above you, and it's a very squared off design. In terms of amenities, I see some rear shades, which is great for a small SUV to have. We do have an armrest that can come down and lock into place instead of just drooping all the way down. There's a cup holder in there. It seems to be a good height. These seats don't recline back. I did notice that. So although they fold down pretty flat, they don't recline back. So that's something you'll have to live with. But like I said, I have lots of room above me, so you wouldn't have to anyway. And then we have some cool vents here. So we have still that new design of moving vents around, which is super cool. It doesn't have the haptic slidey thing like in the front seat. And then we have a touch screen back here to be able to control things like the heated seats back here, as well as that climate control. And then there's this little receiver in the back of the front seats, which if I remember correctly is for accessories like the jacket holder, coat hanger thing. I did notice on the side panels here, it's a little bit cheaper, which for most people is gonna be okay. There's no high quality materials on this door panel whatsoever. It's mainly just plastic. However, again, most people aren't gonna notice that anyway. And the rear seats still have that same Alcantara that's at the front as well. So as long as you're okay with the door panels not having that, I mean, the space alone for a small SUV is really impressive. So sitting back in the NX, this is the macadamia interior, which what we're seeing right now is a lot of interior trends are more to the lighter, the off-whites, the grays, and the warm whites. Where a couple years ago, it was all about Rioja red and circuit red and these red interiors. Now it's becoming more about light interiors. And this one being the macadamia, it is like an off-white and it holds up very well for being such a light interior, and it's contrasted nice because everything else is sort of like dark grays and blacks. So I am a really big fan of that. Shutting the door, I'm reminded that how much I love that electronic door latch. So it's really easy to get in and out, no fuss, just press one button and in one sweep move. And then we have some nice wood grain, but just on, it's like a modern wood grain, just on the door panels themselves. In the center here, we have some grays and some piano black with the electronic shifter. So all you do is put it into gear, let go, and it snaps back. So it's a little bit more classic to some of the push button and slides that I'm seeing for shifters. This is more like your traditional shifter, although it is totally electronic. So it's still working the way that the new shifters work, but sort of doing it in the same motion as like an older shifter. Then in the center, we just have a few buttons. Nothing too crazy. There's no controls here. It's just traction control off. One of the train selects. You can override that automatic on and off on this one, and downhill assist. And then of course the electronic parking brake hold is there. The armrest opens from either side, which is quite nice, and it's in a very good spot. And then we have our wireless charger up here with a little cavity that you can put a few extra things in. And we have an actual switch. It's like a wheel that you spin for eco, normal, and sport modes, which is nice because in some of our other models, you have to like go through the different layers of screen. And on this one, it's pretty easy. Above that, we have our auto park feature. So this is one of the things about Lexus is even though we have those high-end amenities, they're tucked away nicely. So you press that button, the car can park itself. You press the other button, you can have it so the bird's eye view comes on, and you can see a few different angles for parking, etc. Then we have our new Lexus multimedia display, which has made things a lot easier for us because it's got that modern take, really crisp colors, really easy to use. It is a touch screen, and you're gonna use it in conglomerate with your Apple CarPlay, your Android Auto. And even though there is a lot of features packed into here, there's some shortcuts for them. So you can go into this quick screen, turn on things like proactive driving assist or any of those standard safety features, as well as just get out of it, control your heated and cooled seats, your heated steering wheel, all of that through that screen. It's really easy to use and set up, and it's not too far from you to be able to touch. And once it's set up, you're gonna use the steering wheel controls anyway, which by the way, on most of our packages, especially the ones with heads-up display, are gonna be the intelligent version. So you can actually customize what they do. You can see them on that heads-up display, and it really unlocks the potential to use these buttons to control most of the car, which is nice. A big difference between this and the X3 is that screen, that gauge cluster. And what I've noticed comparing the two is our gauge cluster on the Lexus is tucked in, and because of that, it's got like this dark dome around it. I'm sure that's for glare and things like that, but also what I've noticed is instead of being like an HD screen like this center multimedia display, it's got more texture to it. So it sort of reminds me of the old MFD displays where it was almost like reverse color, like the liquid crystal display. And what I like about that is it's not as straining on the eyes, it's still very sharp, and it's not overly bright, and you can still see colors and very dynamic signs and stuff like that. So again, a lot of people will get really hung up on screens, but I prefer this over a big screen in my face any day. But to each their own, let me know what you think. And other than that, everything is just, very classy and timeless inside. Not as many lights or ambient lighting. You can change some of the ambient lighting, but what Lexus calls it is indirect ambient lighting. So instead of actually seeing the source of the light, you can kind of just see the reflection. And there's not a ton of that, just enough to give a little bit of dimension here during nighttime. And we also, how could I forget, have the electronic rear mirror as well. So there is that camera in the back that you can just flip a switch, have that rear view mirror, and shut it down when you don't want it. Okay, so getting in the back seat of the NX, I will say there is less amenities than the X3. Even though this is the fully loaded one, we don't have the sunshade like the X3 does, but we do have things like wood grain and some soft materials on the door panel, which I'm happy to see. The Mark Levinson logo, a little bit of wood grain, an armrest that still clicks into place. It's thick, it has a nice leather to it. And we still have heated seats back here, and then also some vents, although you can't control the actual climate. It's not like a third climate zone like in the X3 and in the RX. However, they are still there. Comfort-wise, I have a decent amount of space. My hair is tickling just that cover above me just a little bit. However, I can recline a little bit, and that was something that you can't do on a lot of the other ones, is you can just reach down here, just like an airplane seat. You have a little bit extra angle to your back, so if you needed to have a nap back here, it's totally doable. Now, at this point in the video, you're probably thinking, okay, Dustin, what about the powertrains? Well, the truth is both models have so many different options for that. On the Lexus side, most of the ones we're selling is gonna be the NX 350h, and the 350 plug-in is like more of a specialty one. However, hybrids and that true multi-stage hybrid is becoming the norm. On the BMW side, we are definitely seeing some more horsepower with turbochargers and mild hybrids and everything sort of combined into one for that spirited driving that BMW is well known for. Now, this begs the question, which one is which? And this is going to depend on what you consider luxury. We have the old money, nori green on macadamia, timeless design of the Lexus, where the interior doesn't have as many bells and whistles, but is super classy and easy to use. Or we have the new kid on the block, the Yeezys of the car world, and that is the BMW with all of that nice ambient lighting, all of the features packed into those really big screens, some really cool new takes on old features, like even how the vents work. And that's like, to me, the new money, or like the new kid on the block. The one that wants to be flashy and bold versus the one that would rather have that subtle luxury to it. So let me know in the comments below which one you prefer and what you think luxury is. I'm Dustin Mason. Big shout out to Performance BMW for letting us use this X3, and hopefully we'll do some more videos soon. BMW and Lexus are dominating the luxury SUV market right now. And in today's video, I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison on the Lexus RX 350 versus the BMW X5, two of the biggest heavy hitters in the entire luxury lineup. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content, and make sure you tell me in the comments which one you would have chosen. Okay, so let's start with the front end of both of these vehicles, and we'll start with the BMW. So with the BMW, we have that classic giant kidney-shaped grille, but like any cars these days, it's not really a grille at all anymore. And what I mean by that is, even though it has the decor of having some three-dimensional airflow, once you get up close and start poking around, quite literally with your fingers, you'll see that it doesn't actually allow any airflow in. And what we're seeing market-wide is that sort of adolescent transition from internal combustion engines to the EV design language. And the thing I like about the BMW is it's a little bit of both. And what I mean by that is it still looks like a grille, even though this car doesn't need that giant kidney grille. And I can't believe I'm saying this, however, there is way more angles and detail here than I'm used to on the Lexus side, which, if you remember, a number of years ago, when we started to come out with those bigger Lexus grilles, it was a little early, and the rest of the design market was like, what is Lexus doing with that massive chin or alien face, or whatever people were saying in the comments? And the BMW sort of said, hold my coffee, Lexus, I'm gonna one-up you and have this giant grille above it. And at the bottom, we have some more of the actual function of the grille. So we have some big, deep air pockets. I'm pretty sure there's even some active vents in there when I was poking around a little bit. And the same goes for the side vents. Those are real. It does look like they're in use. Of course, we have our classic little camera in the center and then some sensors at the bottom, which I really like that they did that, because what I'm seeing in the rest of the luxury car market is everybody needs this sensor for radar cruise control, pre-collision system, all of those things. And they've been sort of slapping it right in the middle of the forehead here and trying to paint it to blend in, where with BMW, they said, no, we're not gonna hide that sensor. We'll just put it down lower so that it doesn't block our beautiful kidney grills. And I think they did a great job of that. Now, if you compare that to the Lexus RX, it actually makes our grille look a little bit more subtle. And you might like that, you might not like that. It depends on your personality and the attention that you like. And this one being an ultra luxury, so it's not that spindle F-Sport grille. It's a little bit more conservative, you could say. And we still have a little bit of the spindle design language, but a little less aggressive, a little bit less of that hatching, that fence-like. And we have it two-tone, so this one is the Nightfall Mica blue color with a little bit of black, and then some of the gray on that grille to actually highlight it. Now, the top of the grille fades into the trim, which when it first came out, I remember people always said, oh, what's with that nose on the RX? And they would always point it out. I'm noticing people don't even notice it anymore, or they don't even bring it up anymore, at least. And I kind of like that it fades away into that grille. And again, we're seeing a little bit of that sort of EV adolescent internal combustion engine. And the rest of the bumper looks a lot more plain compared to the BMW. A little bit of venting at the bottom, however, way less intakes and moving parts and things like that. However, the real trick is always the headlights. And I'm gonna press unlock on both of these, and we'll be able to see the daytime running lights. So on the BMW, this one still has the integrated into the actual headlight housing, where on the Lexus, it's that classic, very sharp check mark, as I call it, that wraps around to the side. And I actually think, just because the BMW is almost using like a three-dimensional reflector built into that headlight, where the Lexus has a standalone frosted LED. So it is a little bit more prevalent than the BMW. However, when I get up close, the BMW headlight assembly itself has a lot more dimensions and decorations. Even getting up close to it, I can see some artwork, some hatching that doesn't necessarily add any light, but gives you something to look at. It even has a logo of BMW LED, as well as some really bright headlights. On the Lexus side, we have the triple beam LED headlight system. And because of it being more of a fully loaded one, it even has the intelligent high beam where you can, some of those headlights will turn off and on based on where the object is. BMW is going to be just as great, I'm sure. I didn't get a chance to drive this at nighttime, but I know in the luxury SUV market, both are very, very good at what they do. Okay, now for a fun little test, because I'm a weirdo for this stuff. Let's compare the sounds that they make, because I notice as I'm getting closer and further from the BMW, it's beeping and it's unlocking and doing things like that. And the Lexus doesn't do that. It doesn't have that auto lock and unlock feature when you get close. So let's compare the beep. First, let's do the Lexus. And now we'll do the BMW. Okay, so the Lexus, or at least the setting it's in right now, is definitely not as loud or as sharp as the BMW. Let me just do that again. Yes, okay, so the BMW is definitely a sharper, higher pitch tone and louder. And the Lexus is a little bit quieter, a little bit softer. To each their own. Again, this should not sway someone from buying either one of these cars. However, if you're trying to find your BMW, you're gonna be able to hear it a lot better, where on the Lexus, I'll probably have to hit the honk button. Let's get into the hood design. So on the BMW, we have these really sharp angles going from the front to the back. I love when vehicle designers do that sort of closer to the middle, because it gives you a little bit of that vision line. So when you're driving it, you can actually see that hood, and I don't know, there's just something about driving a big car and having to be able to see the hood. Then we have the classic BMW logo. That hasn't changed too much over the years, I don't think. And I've always liked that it's got, I don't know if you knew this or not, maybe it's just an online rumor, but since BMW started making airplanes back in the day, they said that that logo is actually that propeller spinning. And I don't know if that's true or not. You can probably tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. On the Lexus, the hood is a lot more flat. We do have these vision lines sort of off to the side that fade. It's almost like a drop-off cliff that fades sort of into the side fender, and a little bit less of a vision line, so you don't see it as much when you're driving. Okay, so let's talk about the side profile of both of these vehicles, but we'll start with the wheels. So a big difference between them, and this is where we're gonna start to see the X5, just a bigger beast of an SUV than the Lexus. And I know in the comments people are gonna be like, why are you even comparing them? They're different in size. Yes, they're different in size. I know that. So the wheels on the X5, the way it's dressed right now, these are a 22-inch wheel setup. Now, it is staggered, so that's very important if you're car shopping and you want to make sure your tires and the maintenance and the upkeep are going to be on a little bit of a budget, because the BMW has 275 in the front and 315s in the rear. So a wider tire in the rear and a really big tire still in the front, where the Lexus is a 235 21-inch all around. So this is more of a square design. You can rotate them. It's easier to get winter tires, stuff like that. It does look amazing though. Like sitting behind an X5 in traffic, the first thing you see is how wide those back tires are. I mean, that size of tire is like what they have on the back of a rear-wheel drive sports car in a sporty SUV. I do really like these V-shaped wheels as well, the 22s that are on this one, because it exposes this massive brake setup with, yes, you have it, an M-logoed big brake caliper. So definitely some stopping power, some grip power on the BMW. The Lexus is a little bit more of a classy design. It's not massive brakes, it's got some nice chrome to it, and just goes with a little bit of class. Okay, the rest of the side profile. So I did notice a couple things. The fender on the BMW is definitely more prominent and longer, but I found one of the first things that I was disappointed in the BMW. And I get why it's there, but this little vent that's on the side that I always see on these BMWs, especially the sport models, is totally fake. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, there is no actual venting there. That is just a piece of plastic slapped onto the side to give some character. And on the Lexus, we didn't need to do any of that. We haven't done any of that. In terms of size, so now when we walk up to the X5, you can see I'm 6'1", and this is probably right in line with my forehead, where when we're standing beside the Lexus, it's a little bit below my nose. So now we're seeing that little bit of a sleeker design on the RX and that taller BMW X5. Doors. So on the Lexus, we do have the electronic door, which I personally love. It's a very easy to open, sort of no effort, just, convenience. Where the BMW is your classic door handle. And what I do really like about the BMW is it has soft close. And it does a really good job with the soft close. That's something that I wish Lexus introduced to more of the mid-level vehicles instead of just the flagships. And I think as time goes on, we're gonna be able to see that a little bit more. As we work our way to the back of both SUVs, so that BMW is very squared off, and it stays that way right to the very end, and it drops off, which makes for a really big quarter panel. Oh, I just realized something. The gas door is on the opposite side. So that is on the passenger side. I remember back in the day, one of my teachers in college was explaining there's like an equation of which cars on the road have the gas on the passenger side versus the driver's side, all to make flow at gas station traffic easier. I don't know if I believe that, but this one is on the other side. Where on the Lexus, again, we have a little bit of a peak of height, even though the door is way lower than my face. And then it swoops down quite rapidly, and it gives you that little bit of a fastback, little bit of that aerodynamic look with a much smaller quarter panel. And again, that Lexus gas tank is on the driver's side. Okay, let's work our way back to my favorite angle on any high-end car, and that is the back end. So these taillights are actually very sharp. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of the Lexus taillights already. However, these ones do a really good job. We have some 3D there. There is some detail when you get up close. That's the thing with taillights, is all we know from them is like us sitting in traffic and being, a car length or a couple car lengths back. But when you get up close to them and they're on, it's always interesting to see a little bit of details, and we see some texture to these ones. I'm a little bit behind on just being able to recognize taillights from a mile away. But these ones do have a very BMW-esque to it. On the side, I see some geometry art, I guess you could call it, with the BMW logo. We also have a lot of different layers and angles. It is an exposed wiper, which I was surprised at when I first approached this one. It does have just this little blade, so it doesn't create a big distraction at all. And then a very large tailgate with a diffuser. This one has a built-in hitch. I don't know if all the X5s have that, but this one definitely does. And I like that BMW is not following the norm of hiding those tailpipes. Instead, we're still seeing them integrated into the rear bumper. They are both real from what I can tell. Not like what I've seen Audi do, where it started to be like a fake tailpipe and then the real one's underneath. This one is real, and it's in use, and BMW is proudly saying we are still burning fossil fuels and we're okay with it, and I like that. Over to the Lexus, however, we have one of my favorite rear ends in the lineup for multiple reasons. One being that really sharp, plain taillight that goes from one end to the other. It underlines the word Lexus as if you're trying to pronunciate and expel how great it is. And we got that hidden wiper up top. And it's something that as your car consumer, you're probably not paying attention to, oh, is the rear wiper showing or is it hidden? But it is hidden. And if you live in an area like I do where you get snow, it's kind of nice having it tucked away, because then when you turn it on, it's going to push all that snow away instead of just moving it around. Again, we continue with that theme of less is more with the Lexus. So we don't have too much decoration, we don't have too many gimmicks. The only thing that I wish we did have is an exposed tailpipe. Instead, it's tucked nicely underneath because of that design language that's happening in the industry of hiding the tailpipes, so that in a couple years down the road, when there's a lot of EVs and hydrogen cars and everything else, you aren't the one that looks out of place with these massive tailpipes coming out. So that was the thought behind it for Lexus. However, I like both. I like the fact that the BMW has the tailpipes, but I like more that the back of the Lexus is super clean and just not much going on. Okay, so let's take a look at the cargo space, because I know the BMW is gonna really shine here. But first, I'm gonna do something new and time how long it takes to open. So let's just find the button. All right, I have it. And stopwatch. And time. The answer is very quick, because who's gonna actually time their tail? The other cool thing about the BMW is this secondary opener. And I forgot that the X5 had this, and I do really like it for multiple reasons. One is if you wanted to chill with your buddies, drink a coffee, maybe a beer, maybe have your golden doodle sitting up here with you, you have this built-in tailgate bench, which I really think is cool, especially if you're at the beach or something like that. But also it creates a lot of space here, because now as you go to load in multiple things, it's a really great height. It has this really durable plastic so you can slide things in, as long as you don't get caught on this little flap here, I think, but if you're mindful of that, it should be fine. Here's another attention to detail that BMW thought of. When you go to open the fake floor, which we all like to do to put more storage or get at, you know, our tools, stuff like that, BMW thought of adding a strut. That's right, a hydraulic strut to that fake floor to hold it up so you don't have to mess around with tying it up, or classic Dustin move is to hold it up with one hand and try and do everything else with the other hand, usually in front of one of our Lexus guests, where I make a fool of myself because I'm like dropping stuff or whatever. But BMW thought of that and has that built-in strut. I also see a lot of space down there. There is no spare tire from what I can see, but we have a decent cavity to be able to put things like cleaning products, some summer mats, which I see right now in there, etc., etc. Also, we have a few little grocery hooks on the side, as well as, and I thought this was funny, an X right in the middle of that panel. I'm trying to do that in like my best DMX voice, but I couldn't. Or exhibit, I guess, is another X voice I could try to do. And then just the classic tonneau cover. In terms of space, it is definitely big. I mean, I'm surprised that there's more of an angle at the top than it looks like from the outside of the vehicle. I mean, on the RX, we have a very big angle there, and the X5 looked a little more square, but we do still have some there. It is a very deep and wide storage container, I would say, with some nice little, you know, cavities for things like your meta kit, tie downs for, you know, nets and things like that. And there was one thing that absolutely blew my mind, and I just did it like 2 minutes ago. When you go to shut this, you might think, oh no, Dustin, don't do that because the bottom tail is open, but really, it does it both together. Mind blown. Great job, BMW. I could totally see why so many people buy these things. All right, over to the Lexus, and I'm not gonna time this one because I know it does a great job of opening in a very timely manner. Definitely a little bit smaller space, however very usable. We don't have that shelf sticking out. However, if I was back here with my golden doodle, I could still hang out with them. We still got a little bit of a shade for some rain. Not as comfortable as the BMW tailgate, but that's okay. Lots of space. It is deep and wide, however, not quite as tall before that angle starts to kick in. So if you're gonna be, you know, stacking things on top of each other every single day, you will start to notice it with the RX. However, a good friend of mine the other day said you should buy a vehicle for what you're gonna do 80% of the time instead of 20% of the time. Realistically, if you're gonna be moving U-Haul boxes and need to stack 5 above, that's gonna be less than 20% of the time. If it's more, you should maybe get like a pickup truck or something. In terms of that fake floor, so ours has a spare tire underneath it. It just folds up sort of 1, 2, 3. And there's still some storage for things like your meta kits, your user manuals, things like that. And of course, our grocery hooks. In the Lexus, I can fold down these rear seats from the back here. And that comes standard on any of the RXs, even the ones without the power rear seats. You can press a button or a lever and fold down those rear seats. So if you did have to put some extra boxes in, you won't have to run around to the side to fold them down. Okay, so inside the BMW, and actually, even though that door was really solid, I just have to do one more thing and just do the soft close. Because like my friend Ahmed says, if your car has soft close and you paid for soft close, you gotta use it every time. Okay, so inside the interior here, I hate that I always say this, but there is a lot going on and so much to talk about. So number one is obviously this gorgeous sort of a cognac brown, maybe like a Saddletown brown interior. The leather feels very high quality, which I like. There's like the plastic bezel on the doors, for instance, is just sort of basic. There's not much decor to it. However, there is some really nice wood grain trim. I wouldn't even call it wood grain. I would call this more like a granite or stone-like finish. It's definitely veneer, so it's not real, but it has a really nice texture to it. Captures the light well because it's almost like a satin finish. It's got that look to it, the asymmetrical that looks like there could be no two the same, which I think is really nice. Same thing with the center here. We see more of that sort of stone-like texture, and I think they do a really good job of it. Towards the center, we can focus on that first. We do have the butterfly armrest, which reminds me of the Lexus TX. I don't know why I thought it was a Lexus first, but it was a first in Lexus to have that. So the nice thing about that is each passenger can have theirs down if they wanted. Decent amount of space in there. I mean, people don't go too crazy over those anyway. The center console itself is quite large, and I like that it gets wider as you go up. We have some interesting textures here. So we have almost like that crystal diamond sort of shape for the shifter. Yes, that's right. This is the shifter, where it's almost like a big window switch, to be honest, because you have like 1 click, 2 click, 3 click, 4 click, just like a window switch does. And that's in the center to get it from drive to reverse to park, and then you just press that park button. Among that, we have our different drive modes. I like that BMW did a job of having it that you can just quickly press those instead of having to scroll through a wheel or do it fully on the screen, which is the way that Lexus started to go. And on this one, we can just go sport, comfort, eco, downhill assist. The parking brake is even there, all with actual switches. And when you change them, I noticed it does a very good job of using artwork to show you which mode you're in. And what I mean by that is when you put it in comfort, you see like a bumpy comfort, like a bumpy road. When you put it in sport, you see again like some more mountains and roads and stuff like that. And then eco, you see something that looks soft and beautiful. So really good job there. The start stop also has that same crystal-like finish to it. You don't really feel much of a texture, it just feels like glass. And then the main control here, which I'm gonna call it the BMW remote, the remote wheel maybe, also has a little bit of that crystal glass to it. It is like a joystick with wheel. It doesn't use gestures or anything like that. I think you just use it as a wheel. And that gives you best of both worlds. So you can press the screen and use the touch screen, and it is a curved glass that's a little bit forward towards you. Or if you wanted to fine tune and just keep your arm here or keep your fingerprints off that screen, you can just use the wheel, and it does a really good job. Above that, we have this little sliding door here. I will say, this is something that feels a little off to me. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if it's because this interior is cold right now, but when I go to press it, I can feel I have to put a little bit of pressure. So it's almost like it is scraping on itself. I don't know if that's because of that textured top piece or if it's designed to be that way, but it does do that. Inside, I'm so jealous of this. We have cup heaters and coolers. I love that so much. I really, really do. And then a wireless charging pad sort of tucked nicely away, which I always like when there's something to put, a place to actually put your phone. I'm worried that my 15 Pro Max wouldn't fit in there, but we'd have to try that. And then a 12-volt outlet with this cute little plastic cover to be able to cover it up, because most people aren't going to use that very often. But yes, the fact that it has heated and cooled cup holders, I'm very much a fan of. Above that, we have a tiny little audio panel. So we have just our quick volume knob, forward and backward, and our 4-way switch, which is always important to note where that is. And then just a quick front defroster and rear defroster. The vents above that are super, super cool. So we have this little joystick design that matches the same texture of the panel, like the light panel beside it. And then you can open and close them by twisting them. And the click sound that it makes is very satisfying, I will say that. And then you have the panel that goes from left to right. I can't remember what BMW calls this. I think it's like a light panel or something like that. But at nighttime, it's got all your ambient lighting built into it. It's got these arrows and the X5 logo. They did a really good job of that. The rest of the dashboard, not too many layers to it, just that texture, some soft touch leather, as well as some more of those triangle shapes. That's sort of one of the themes here is triangle shapes. I did notice that. Then we have this OLED curved screen, which reminds me of like being at Best Buy or Future Shop or whatever. Really, really nice system. It's super quick. There's so many things to navigate. And I'm one of those people that like, I'll never judge a system without spending like a week with it, because the way it's designed isn't just for someone using it as a rental for one day and knowing how to do everything. It's for an owner that's gonna use it every day and learn more and more. And even just taking a quick look, it's gonna be pretty easy for someone to learn. And if they can't, there's even a very easy to get to built-in owner's manual, which I've seen on the Lexus product as well. Wireless Android Auto, wireless Apple CarPlay. Like I said, super easy to get to, and you could do everything if you wanted from this little wheel here, which is quite nice. And it seems like there's lots of customizable stuff there. So pretty good job there. I will say, when I was pulling this into the showroom here, I found something that made me like this car so much. I even said to everybody that's here today, uh-oh, I'm gonna fall in love with this. BMW, the sound that you make when we park you is unbelievable. Like, instead of being like a beep, 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 as you get closer to something, it's almost like a piano note. Like a Kanye West song where Runaway is about to start, and as you get closer, it just changes notes. And it was so harmonic, it was so beautiful to hear. It's like one of those things that just because it's notifying me doesn't mean it has to hurt your head. And I remember I had a BMW back in 2011, and the beeping and the bopping and stuff like that was so aggressive, and I didn't like it. But now it's very, very satisfying to hear. Even when the doors open or anything like that, they did a really great job. Looking at the other screen that we have here, so on the steering wheel, we have a couple buttons, classic. This is not anything too out of the ordinary. Our cruise controls, our volumes, and then there's even like a little wheel. And the wheel sort of shows me right now all the different music stations I have. I can move that over to different, customizable options and things like that, as well as being able to customize a little bit what I see on that driver display, which they did a really good job of. I mean, you can change from content to heads-up display and do all that with that same wheel and controller. And that's how you're gonna get to like everything from your map, which can show up there, your route preview, and the AR, which is an augmented view. Super, super cool, because then if you have navigation on, you see almost like a front-facing camera and then where you have to turn. I mean, doesn't get much better than that. BMW tech has always been very modern and forward-thinking, so I'm not super surprised about that. Steering wheel itself, comfortable leather. I mean, nothing too crazy there. It is full round. It's got the M logo. I did notice the seats have a ton of adjustments, and when you're pressing the buttons, so usually any car brand that has the buttons on the side of the seat, you're usually just guessing which lever you're pulling on. I noticed it shows up on the screen. So right now I'm adjusting lumbar, it shows me that I'm moving the lumbar up and down and out and in. And when I touch another button, it'll show me that. It'll show me that I'm adjusting the bolsters. Instead of me just like pressing a button and then like waiting and trying to see where it's feeling in my back, it actually shows you there. So really, really good job BMW for that. I can see why that would be very useful. Okay, so now sitting in the RX 350, which by the way, this is the birch interior. Starting to see this come back a little bit where, a couple years ago, red interior was like the hot thing. Now, these grays and off-whites and soft whites are sort of all the rage. I really like that it brightens up a little bit of that cabin. However, the dash and trim all stay like a nice rich black. So some really nice contrast between the two. I'm a big fan, and it holds up actually quite well for being such a light interior. Okay, so getting in, the first thing I notice is obviously that electronic door latch. I mean, so easy, so cool. I love that it does that. It's no fuss, just super easy. The layout itself has some more layers to it. So we have some nice wood grain, some nice soft touch on the door panel, the bezel, things like that just have that elevated appearance. The BMW had like almost like a textured satin rock-like finish. This is almost the same thing, however, a little bit darker and more of like a wood texture instead of that rock texture. But very same idea. We see a little bit of this on the dash, a little bit in the center console here, and also a little bit on the steering wheel, which is just really classy. The dash itself has a little bit more layers to it. So we have like a lower portion and an upper portion. The center, way less buttons because we don't have any controller here, right? It's mainly just a couple cup holders. And then there is still some hard buttons for things like turning off traction control, changing to like an off-road mode, a downhill assist. And the shifter, instead of being that window switch style, it is kind of a mix of like the classic gear shift and a button where you just go over, down, over, and up. It snaps back into place sort of thing. And it is totally electronic. It's just a little bit more familiar if you're used to, the way cars used to have it. Armrest opens from both sides, so both passenger and driver can get into that quite easily. We have the cup holder that can go up and down. So yes, we don't have heated and cooled cup holders, but we have the ones that go up and down. So if your drink is already cold or hot, it's gonna be fine anyway. Then we have a little bit of a sliding door, and that's the thing, there is no hesitation there. It's just really, really nice and easy to use. USB-C, USB-A, and then a couple extra USB-Cs. The vents, pretty standard. There is just a little bit of control here with the classic wheel. That hasn't been innovated too much. it's functional, and that's all that matters. And then from there, everything else is gonna be controlled to that screen, including things like the seat climate control, the vehicle climate control. All of that is gonna fire on with that new Lexus multimedia display. And yes, just like the BMW, no one should judge this until they've tried it for a little bit, because it is, once you get used to it, it is super easy to use. Everything that you need is very short. I would say there's probably less features baked into the system than the BMW, just based on how many icons I saw. But everything else is really easy. You're gonna set your climate control, you're gonna have your quick screen for things like changing your heads-up display or turning on and off all of those safety features, which come standard on the Lexus. And then you're gonna use Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And the screen itself is super responsive, it's super crisp. I have no complaints about that. It is like a more square design than the BMW. The BMW is more wide. It's almost like that infinity display in the BMW, where the Lexus is like, here's your radio, here's your dashboard, and they separate the two of them. Then we have our heads-up display, which the BMW had as well, and our driver monitoring system on the Lexus. So what that does is, if you're not paying attention, the car might be like, hey Dustin, eyes on the road, buddy. Stop looking at that McDonald's sign. You don't need that right now. The car is actually telling me to stay healthy and stay on a diet. And then we have that multimedia display, which, okay, here's something I'm noticing right now. The one in the BMW is like the same texture and colors of that HD OLED display, where with Lexus, what I'm noticing, and I didn't notice this until now, is the actual screen that you see for your gauges and stuff, it's in this little dome. So it's actually recessed into the dash a little bit to make it darker. It's almost like the old LCD displays where it's like the reverse of being lit up. It's like a texture, but it does have that screen. It does have crisp colors and stuff, but it's just less intense to look at and a little bit more simple and efficient. I mean, yes, there's lots of icons that you have to learn what they are, and there's lots of customization because it has the intelligent touch steering wheel. So like, you know, you can change what you see on any of these screens really, but the actual colors and way they look is very soothing and calming, and it's not overwhelming at all. So Lexus does a really good job of not overdoing it, I would say. Okay, so getting back into the back of the X5, one of the things I noticed is since it is so squared off, I have a ton of headroom. It's got the panel glass, which is always great being a passenger back here. I did notice when I got in, the back seats don't recline. It's not the end of the world because I have headroom, and you know, they're not like I'm not like leaned forward or anything like that, but because the structure in the back, they don't recline any further than what I'm sitting right now. In terms of fit and finish, we still have some of those really nice high quality materials here in the door. We also have a little sunshade, which is great. There is something I noticed that no Lexus has, and I wish they did, and that's this little guy right here. So this is like a little trap door you can open up, and there's a USB-C and you can plug in stuff, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, you can add accessories to this little receiver here. Things like a coat hanger for your jacket can click into there. I think there's some other stuff, maybe a tray table, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's really nice. I think it's cool that it's integrated into something that's right in front of you anyway. Looks like we have heated seats back here as well as our own climate control. Armrest wise, they do a good job. It's really cool. I always think it's cool in BMW, and they've done this forever. They have cup holders that come out of nowhere. It's like they fold in like a transformer and pop out. And that's what this thing does. Is it looks like there'd be no way that there would be cup holders here. And then you open it up and they come out of nowhere. And they're not flimsy. Like they'll actually do a good job of holding your cup. So I think that's great. Tiny storage though. The armrest has like, I would say depth wise is like this. And it's not big enough for a magazine. So, I mean, you could put your phone in there. You could put your phones in there. Or like maybe an iPad mini or something like that. So other than that, back here, we have just your handles, a couple lights, nothing too crazy in this package at least. I did notice no cooled seats in this package, just heated seats. Oh, and okay, that's nice. The headrest can actually fold up or down very easily, it looks like. So you can have it down or up and be comfortable both ways. So overall, really good, really spacious. Not quite as many amenities as I was expecting, but still really nice. So getting into the back of the RX, I've never felt like it has a low ceiling until getting in the BMW first. However, I do always love that you can recline back quite a bit back here. Like I'm almost in a position where I could nap, and that's saying something because I have trouble sleeping in the backseat of cars, even though I can fall asleep on a plane right away. And that's what it feels like, is sort of the angle of like reclining on a plane. Texture-wise, and nothing crazy here. You have to go up a higher package to get the window shades, but you can get them. However, even in this one, I have heated and cooled back here. And that's all controlled from the center here, along with our climate control, our USB-Cs, etc., etc. So a couple amenities, panel roof, of course, and a nice hefty armrest, similar to the BMW, with some fold-out cup holders and a little bit deeper of a pocket, although just a little bit smaller width-wise. But overall, in the back of the RX, I've never been afraid to sit back here for a long period of time with another person, maybe another two, because it is wide, it's still super comfortable. It's like the best of both worlds of sleek design, still spacious enough, and very luxurious. Okay, so yes, there are some other things I didn't go over yet that I'm sure by this point in the video, you're scratching your head saying, let's talk about the powertrain. The BMW X5 has multiple different powertrain options, and yes, some of them are, high 300s into the 400s with turbochargers and mild hybrids and things like that. It is definitely a heavier vehicle, but you can get a little bit more power out of it with some of those other powertrains. On the Lexus side, we do have the RX 500h, which would be our high performance hybrid. Same thing, you can get up to like 400 pounds of torque, still some good gas mileage. However, most of the ones you're gonna see on the road are gonna be like this one, the 350 or even the 350h, which is gonna have a lot less power than the average X5. However, a little bit smoother because it's more of a true hybrid system instead of that mild hybrid system, as well as, just a little bit better fuel economy because it's lighter in general. So that's it, my summary. Both of these SUVs are absolutely amazing, and I can see why they're the hottest in the market right now in their class. However, they have definitely different personalities. On the right, we have a very timeless design, or on my right at least, a very timeless design of the Lexus that offers a lifestyle of, simplistic yet classy and timeless, where the BMW does a great job of being bold and hot and the new kid on the block with complications and features and tons of electronic and just over-the-top luxury. So my question to you is, what does luxury mean to you? And I want you to let me know in the comments below. Does it mean timeless class or hot, new, and flashy? Because that should be something you ask yourself when shopping for these SUVs. And if you are car shopping, make sure you go to performance.ca, where our company has 23 brands, over 37 dealerships ranging all over Ontario, and has over 50 years of automotive experience. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Big shout out to Performance BMW for letting us film this beautiful X5 today. And let me know in the comments below what you think. And I'll see you in the next one.